when I heard the snap, the overwhelming feeling that you're being watched. I have a dog, it's a bloodhound that will basically chase anything or track anything. This time, in this particular area, he will not get off the boat and go into this area. It is even when I just pull up in there now to this area, he basically will get off the boat, sniff the ground a little bit, and he's right back on. So he won't go into this area. It happens to be the area that we went into, the same area yesterday. I did not take the dog. Um, I've only had my dog for almost 4 years now. Uh, prior to me, getting my dog, I had gone into this particular area. Uh, it was probably the second year into um, me trying to find out about Bigfoot and so forth. I went to this particular area in my canoe, and I don't have any witnesses to this. Um, I can tell the story 1,000 times; it's never going to change. Uh, it was a unique experience. I'm going to say that these things have a sense of humor. Um, so I got to this area. I'm in my canoe, and as soon as I got out, I got up onto the bank, and I pulled my canoe all the way up onto the bank. 16-foot canoe. It's fiberglass. It's not very heavy. So I pulled it up onto the bank where there was no part of the canoe still in the water. Okay. There was a little edge. I pulled up, brought the canoe up onto it. It was the end of the canoe was hanging over the edge, but was not in the water because the water level was about 1.5 feet below the edge of the ground. There's no wind. It's about 80 degrees, sunny, nothing, no wind at all. Water's like glass. And I pulled the canoe up, and about 30 yards to my right is the bottom of a big tree root where the tree had fallen away from where I was looking. On the other side of this tree root, I hear a snap, and immediately just hair stood up on my back. And I was going there to set up a trail cam. When I heard the snap, the overwhelming feeling that you're being watched. And I was actually I was nervous to go in there by myself, but I was like, look, I got one trail cam I'm trying to set up, and that is it. Because I'm going to be out here for 2 days. I wanted to make sure that I had a trail cam set up while I was out fishing, next night. So, with a very uneasy feeling of being watched, I decided, all right, I'm just going to go up in here and try to set this camera up and get out. So I'm walking up in, and I'm probably about 50 or 60 yards up into the woods, enough where I can just barely see the canoe. And I got the trail cam set up, and I decided, all right, I'm going to walk up just a little bit further. I still felt like I was being watched. I still felt all of that, and I I just kept going anyway. And I get to the top of the hill, and lo and behold, I smell just a city dump. It stinks all to high heaven. I knew at that point I was like, okay, I can smell it. I can't see him or it. I got to get out of here. So at that point, I had probably been up there about 35, 40 minutes total. So as I'm walking back down the hill, I kind of started walking a little bit quicker after I smelled it. And I started walking back down the hill, and the thought just actually went through my head. I hope my canoe's still there. And I walked back down to the hill, to the bottom of the hill, and my canoe is in the middle of the cove, out in the water. Hair's standing up on it right now. I took my boots off and I went, I can't believe that just happened. So I waded out into the water, and the water is probably in the cove where this area is. Water's probably about 2 to 3 feet deep. But the boat actually, the canoe was actually 30 or 40 yards off the bank. It was pushed. It was lowered into the water and then pushed out because there's no way. Because I mean, it's sitting out in the middle of this cove on glass water. Okay, there's just there's no way that this thing fell off the bank. There's no way. I went back out. I took my boots off. I went out, waited out there. I got my canoe. I walked back with the canoe on my, when I'm walking through the water, I'm just pushing the canoe back. And I get back up on the bank. I threw my boots in the canoe and I left. And later that evening, only because I was like trying to see, I tried to sit in my canoe fairly close to this area, knowing that there was a trail cam there, seeing if he would come down or throw rocks or anything like that. And that evening, just as it got dark, I had a rock thrown at me from that area. And I just sat there for a little bit and a second rock threw. And I left. I just was like, he doesn't want me there. I did go back and get the trail cam. There was absolutely nothing on it whatsoever. But I know that there is no possibility that the canoe went out there by wind. There's no way. And all I could think when I was leaving that area when I put my boots in the canoe and I'm paddling away, I literally just sat there and thought, I'll bet you there's 3 or 4 of them sitting up on top of that hill just laughing their head off. That's my only answer. I have no other explanation for it whatsoever. I, that's it. I have nothing else as far as how that could have happened.
It is kind of amazing. I'm sure you've gone over all of the possibilities of how that canoe could possibly have gotten into the water. I mean, there was no wind, right? And nothing
Nothing.
else was in the area. Of course, there wasn't a person around or anything like that. So, were there any other ideas that came to your mind that could possibly have created that?
No. Nothing there. I mean, I'm very logical. I can critically think. I can problem solve. There was nothing. There's absolutely nothing that could have done that. When I stepped off that boat and I heard that snap on the other side of the root wall, I literally at that moment felt like there was something there. As I was going up when I was going up with my trail cam, I kept looking back in that area because I just had an overwhelming feeling that there was something there. So when I went up to the top of the hill, out of sight of the canoe, my thought is that the one that was down there just pushed it out. And yeah, they were probably laughing about it afterwards.
So when you went yesterday, so nothing phenomenal happened at that point. It was just a kind of a benign experience day.
Yesterday was just a benign experience day. Me and my daughter went out to literally just to take some pictures. There's a series of right in this area, and it happened probably about 2 years ago. Like from one season to the next, me going up there, the trees this area of trees was very new for the way these trees were broke. There's, I have it on video. I want to say there's probably, man, 12 or 13 somewhere, somewhere between 10, 13 big pine trees. And when I'm talking big pine trees, I'm talking 100 foot or more. And the area, as you go back into this cove, I believe that the family of them lives up on the right-hand side of the cove, up on top of the hill, which is where I usually go in. But that whole side of the cove, there are at least 10, 12 of these big giant pine trees, and they're all pushed over in the exact same direction and lined up. It literally would take a group of engineers and excavating equipment to pull this off, of how perfectly parallel all of these trees are, just dropped perfectly to where not only could you not get a boat in there, you really can't even get a canoe in. They blocked this off completely. What I did is I took a picture as I'm taking the first set of pictures from my canoe outside to where you can see these trees drop. And then I actually went on the inside and I took photographs of like where the trees were pushed over, and every single one of them is pushed where the whole root ball comes out. And there's literally these root balls in this big line right along with these trees. And there's no, it's just literally one line of trees. There's no other trees broke down, no other trees pushed down in that area. These things were systematically pushed down right along the bank to where you can't get it. And it's absolutely, it was done on purpose by them. There's no human that could have done this. Any wind that would have come in to knock that big of trees down, and that many, there would have been other trees down, and there weren't. It's just a straight line of trees that drops and blocks off this one whole section that basically leads right up into what I believe is their living. So,
Have you had any other experiences right there in that area?
a lot of rock throws, had a tree break. I did get one. I did cast a footprint in that area. I believe it was a juvenile. It was only about 12 or 13 inches long. That was I think the very first foot casting I ever got. Yeah, but we went in there yesterday, very benign. Me and my daughter both felt like we were being watched. But it wasn't as intense as it normally is. We didn't, in fact, it's weird because when we got off the canoe, as soon as we got off the canoe, my daughter got off the canoe, and I stepped out of the canoe onto the right by the edge of the water so I could pull the canoe up onto the bank. And as soon as I was getting ready to pull up the canoe, my daughter Sarah goes, "Did you just hear that tree break?" And I went, "Are you serious?" And she goes, "Yeah." "Did you hear it?" I went, "No, where did it come from?" And she goes, "Up on top of the hill." I go, "Was it loud?" She goes, "Well, I heard it from up there." And I go, I kind of smiled. I was like, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm serious." And I said, "Okay." That was the only thing we heard. That was the only thing that happened. And I had my GoPro on, so I, I don't. I'd have to go back and listen to see if the tree break was caught on audio. my GoPro, but I didn't hear it. But that was the first thing. As soon as she stepped onto the land, she heard a tree break from up top. Um, and yesterday there was no wind or nothing yesterday. It was actually pretty hot and muggy in the woods there. But that was the only thing that we experienced. I did take um, we did leave some apples and a small stuffed animal, and we may go back in a week or so and see if it's gone.
Let's talk structures. Have you seen any structures built in the areas that you've been in?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's quite a few. Um, I think one of the odd things that one of the odd things that happened, which made me believe that there's quite a few in this area, is that there was one evening or one night that my son and myself we were out fishing, and we had um, a couple tree breaks and I think a couple rocks being thrown kind of close to where we were. Now we're about like if the lake's 5 miles long this way, we were roughly about halfway in the middle of the lake, but we were on one side, and we heard like two tree breaks and a rock throw that was fairly close to us, and we hung there for a little bit, and we didn't. Nothing else happened, so we decided we were going to go across the lake, and just to canoe across the lake might take 10 minutes um, to get to just to get across to the other side. We paddled across to the other side, and as we're coming into the other side, getting closer to the shore, we literally hear something bipedal go up over the hill. So they're on both sides. There's no way that the one could have, made it around the one that was, you know, throwing stuff at us over here. There's no way, it's miles to get all the way around. There's no, he didn't swim across, faster than we paddled. But when we got to the other side, there was another one on the other side. It just tells me that there's a lot of them up there. They're all over this lake. There's probably, I think personally, I've seen four. What I when I call a TP structure, where there may be three, four, five of these, big poles all pointing together in a TP structure, and I kind of feel like I don't know if this is true. It's just been my theory, but I believe that like each one of those represents a family. Like that's their living room, and if there's like five posts, I've I've always interpreted that to be that there's five Bigfoot in this family that live. But I know of four different structures just on this one lake alone. I don't know if same family doing it. I think there were two of them have, if I remember right, two of them have three posts. One has four and one had five. They're, I mean, they could be on the lake wide. It could be a mile in between each one. Um, but when we're out there, it really doesn't even matter where you go on the lake. If at night, if you're by the shore, um, it's almost like something's going to happen. I just feel like they're all over that place. I don't know. I still go back. Tree breaks, and tree bends and stuff like that. I believe are. I don't know what they mean, but I do know they're markers. Whether it's whether you find the big X, meaning stay out. Um, I found a couple of unique rock piles that just out in the middle of nowhere that I don't. It's hard to believe that there was a human out there, stacking rocks. Um, I do think that they're all some sort of communication. whether it's a communication of a message to humans, or I don't know if it's, communication between them. I do believe that those markers are there. My gut says that, sometimes they say, well, they bend a tree or something so they know like where they're going. Okay, they probably know the area pretty well. So my thought is that they're bending these things to tell us to stay. I'm sure they communicate, perfectly fine on their own. They don't have to like bend trees and stuff to tell each other, stuff.
What all have you heard in the way of any kind of chatter or anything like that? Have you heard anything like that?
I've heard I've heard that there's a howl. I'm trying to think of what it's not grassman howl. Um, I've heard a howl a couple times that like like you could tell that it was, it could have been a half mile away, but the length of the howl that lasted 45 seconds to a minute is like there's no animal, that can do that. I've heard that twice. Um, I heard a grunt one time, but I can't say for sure what that one was. Um, but I absolutely had the one that yelled at me from 20 yards away with the lung capacity of an elephant. It was so loud that, and this thing was 20 yards from me. It was pitch black out. I couldn't see anything, but the yell was so loud that it literally like reverberated through my body. And it was just, I mean, it was terrifying noise to hear because the first thought is, what? What, I didn't even have time to like comprehend what I just heard. I think I did it on your last one, but it was definitely syllables. Um, I'll try to reenact it, but it was "Wah, wah, 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 wah," just 100 decibels, blaring. I mean, just blasting out of this thing at me. And then 5 seconds after that noise, while my head is still trying to process this, 100 yards down the bank, basically the same thing was said. And I don't know if they were yelling at each other or this one yelled at me and then that one yelled again, but there was absolutely two of them, and it was the same vocalization.
But you haven't
Um,
heard that since that time.
I have not heard since that time. I have not heard since that time. It was shortly after that I actually, when I got my GoPro, and I did it, I think more so for audio, um, because at night you really can't see anything. So, I made sure that I got one with audio.
So my story is brief, but I run cross country and track, so I'm down in the trails a whole bunch, on like trails in the woods. I'm down there a lot. So there was one day that I was down at a metro park in Inglewood, and I was assigned a hill workout. So basically, run fast up and down a hill so many times at a certain pace. Once you go like so fast, and so the hill kind of turns. It goes up and makes a curve and goes up an even steeper hill. So on the side of this hill, there's like some thick woods on the side of the hill, and I've run up this hill like countless times. It's grueling, but it's I've been there a whole bunch, so I'm familiar with the area. It's just extremely thick woods just surrounding you. And so I was running up this hill, and I was with my buddy Jackson. He's a really good runner, really sweet guy. We were both running side by side. I was closest to the woods, and we heard on the man. Well, I don't know about him because I didn't ask him this. I didn't ask if he heard this because we were probably both running. He was probably focusing on getting to the top of that hill. But I heard like on on my side, I heard like some snapping in the trees. And like I kind of thought that kind of sounds like a tree snap, like that some snapping trees. I'm like, that's pretty loud for some like sticks crumpling down there. And we made the curve going up the hill, and this tree probably trying to think how big it probably was about like 6 inches in diameter, and probably more 8 inches in diameter. It fell from the almost near the middle of the tree. This was a pretty tall tree, and I didn't see where it snapped because it was super far into the woods. But this giant tree fell and landed very close to the bike trail, and I mean, it kind of startled me at the time because I was like, oh, that's awful close for that big tree to fall. And I didn't think much of it when I was running because I was just trying to get the workout done. But I was like, I'm glad I didn't get hit by the tree. But after I got done, I thought of the stories that my dad has told me, and I was like, I wonder if that was a Bigfoot because it's like I don't think just like something like wind or anything could snap that tree. And that tree was perfectly alive. And we actually recently went back up to that metro park and up to that same spot. I was going to show my dad where I saw it, and there's not a dead tree in that entire area. So I was like, this is not it. It easily could have been a Bigfoot because there's not a single dead tree, and it does not get windy up in there. It's not highly elevated, so its wind doesn't get close to where the trees were.
My name is Tom Danley. I am from southwestern Pennsylvania, Washington County, Canonsburg. I live on a 2,800-acre farm, family owned for about 150 years. And nothing really out of the ordinary had ever happened growing up, as far as Bigfoot or anything like that. About 10 years ago, I was setting up a ground blind to do some doe hunting, and I was hammering some nails in, and something answered me. And I really didn't think anything of it. So I just continued to work. Well, within about a half an hour, I heard something really large approach me. And the way it approached me was through a super, super heavy area, like so thick it was impossible to get through. And after I heard that, I started hearing like some grunting and some growling, and it was kind of like, "Ruh, ruh." And I ignored it again until it got to the point where it was so threatening that I had to flee. Well, when I fled, it was about 200 yards. I got back to the truck and I turned around, and between two big trees was the most enormous creature I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it was every bit 9 foot tall, jet black, and it was doing this rocking side to side. It totally changed everything that I had ever believed in my life. I mean, as a kid, like I watched the Leonard Nimoy In Search of, and you figure I'm 52 years old, so back then that was a huge thing. And now all of a sudden it was reality. I wasn't quite hooked yet. About 3 weeks later, it was the first day of deer season for rifle. I was on a gas line, and I was about 1,000 yards away from where I had my sighting. And all of a sudden, I hear this crash, and a female Bigfoot comes down and stops in the middle of the gas line. She was about 200 yards away, 300 yards away, but I had a 12-power scope. So I cranked it as high as it would go, and I could literally see breast on her. It was real thin. The hair on her chest was real thin. I could see the definition. You could clearly tell she was female. And she had disappeared into an area where there's some mine subsidence in there and a huge lake. And again, it was real thick. From that point on, I was hooked. I mean, I had to know what was going on, what they were, all, as much as I could possibly figure out about these things, I had to know. So, approximately the last 10 years, I have pretty much devoted myself. I mean, no less than 4 days a week, I'm in the field. And when I say in the field, I mean here on the farm, because, like I said, it's 2,800 acres. Um, and we have no shortage of sign. Why I never seen any of this sign before, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't, I wasn't looking for it. They didn't present themselves, but it's there. And there's a whole family group here. Um, my father's seen the big male about 3:30 in the morning when he come home from work, working the night shift, and he's scared to death. Now we have stillborn livestock come up missing. We have young newborns come up missing. Occasionally, something will break into the barn. Um, I pretty much zeroed down to where they live, their home area, and it's a pretty big sinkhole on the farm, and that's what I was talking about my accident. I found out the other night that you don't get too close to these things when you got technology. It's really weird. If I'm out there without a camera, without a cell phone or anything, I feel fine. As soon as I got a cell phone or a camera or anything, you get this fight or flight feeling about you, like impending doom. You have to get out of there at no cost. You're about to die. And I disregarded that the other night, and I don't know if I was attacked or I took a wrong step, to be honest with you. All I remember was I heard some really loud crash, and I was in the air, and I was chucked down over a hill. And as you see, I'm not looking the greatest because I'm pretty busted up. It's pretty hard to move, and I'm still trying to do my day-to-day chores. Now I've done some investigating in Somerset County, Elk County, Cambria County. There's a place called Chestnut Ridge. Stan Gordon does a lot of investigations out there. I actually had seen, well, let's put it this way. I think I had seen a Bigfoot out there while I was trout fishing. I can't say 100%, and I don't ever like to say 100% because you get these guys that are like, it was definitely a Bigfoot. I know it was. No, I don't approach it like that. I do everything I can to debunk it, and when I can't debunk it, then that's when I sit down and start thinking about, well, could it have been, you know? And I look for the evidence. I don't automatically jump to it was a Bigfoot. We do have black bears in this area, so I'm not real quick to scream Bigfoot, but I know they're there. I've seen them. I've found tracks. I have DNA samples here. I have audio, but it seems like the only thing that's really going to satisfy mainstream science is a body, and that's a really sad thing because it's real possible for us to live in peace with these things. Um, and I just think these guys that are out there gunning for them, I think it's going to cause more trouble than it's worth. You know, I know there's a lot of different opinions on it. That's just mine, of course. And I have, like I said, a 10-year working hypothesis on these things, all the way from their breeding patterns, their travel patterns, the reasons they do things. I put a whole lot of my time and thought into this.
You have narrowed it down to a specific kind of placement of where you think they live. What is the evidence that shows that it could very likely be where they are inhabiting?
I'm finding a lot of bone piles of the animals that were missing on the farm. I found a nest. I actually call it a birthing nest because it has 3 chambers in it, and it's built in these old pine trees. I found tracks going into the sinkhole, and there's some hair on the rocks that I've found going into the sinkhole. So I'm almost positive that that's where they're living.
Have you had that hair analyzed at all?
I haven't. I haven't. I sent Dr. Meldrum an email, and I'm waiting on a response from him to find out exactly where to send it.
Describe this sinkhole to me. What is it like?
Um, are you familiar with old coal mine sinkholes at all?
A little, not a whole lot.
All right. Well, basically, it's when the inside of the old coal mine collapses and it opens up a hole on the top of the earth. So it's like an entrance into a new cave system because the old coal mine is now collapsed, but it's left a huge void in there. And some of these go back miles and miles.
And that's where you fell.
Yeah, well, I didn't fall. I was by the sinkhole and off to my right. Back in the, I guess, 20s and 30s, they used to do something called strip mining, high wall. And what they would do is they would dig out a quarry and they would strip the coal from the top of the ground and they would never fill it in. Some of these go down hundreds and hundreds of feet. And that's what I either tripped and fell over or I was thrown over as one of those high walls.
Was there any indication before you fell that there was something around? You said there was some noise.
Yeah, I heard something come crashing down on me like it was running up on me. And like I said, the next thing I remember is I was flying, and then I remember waking up going into the hospital.
Who found you? How did you get to the hospital?
Well, I have quite a few buddies that I do research with, and one of my buddies had found me. They were yelling for me on the radio, and when they couldn't find me, they knew where I was at, and they came looking for me. You know, my camera's still out there, my parabolic dish is out there, my recorder's out there. I'm just in no condition to get out there right now. You know, you can see my face is all swollen. I got a huge spot on the side of my head. Um, I'm beat up pretty good.
What do you think these things are?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I want to say primate, because they exhibit so much primate behavior. Just the sounds that they make, you know, it all points to primate. There's a lot of talk about maybe an alien connection or um, a dimensional connection. Who am I to say? Be honest with you. Like I said, I like to keep an open mind because they say there's people who have seen them disappear right in front of them. I've seen orbs in the woods. I've seen different colored orbs floating around in the woods. I want to say primate, but honestly, can we really rule out dimensional being or alien? I don't know. I don't know. That's why I'm so obsessed in this research is to find out exactly what they are. And the second part of that is how do we protect them? You know, we protect deer, we protect small game. How do we protect these creatures? I think they deserve protecting. They have young, just like gorillas, just like any other animal. They have babies. How do we protect them? How do we keep them from being exploited, being killed to extinction? Let's face it, man's great at killing off animals to extinction. You know, that's what we do.
Do you think the orbs have anything to do with the Bigfoot?
Possibly, possibly. There's definitely a spiritual side to it. All the native tribes from all over the world have, um, what would you say, lore about these animals, and yeah, I think there's some Native American connection there. I could be wrong. These orbs could be something totally different. I've seen something in the woods that looks like, the movie Predator. The predator creature, he had that camouflage that blended in. I have seen things in the woods that look exactly like that. And not once or twice, but dozens and dozens of times. And that could be Bigfoot cloaking, for all I know. You know, quite a few times in hunting season, the thought crossed my mind, well, shoot and see what happens. But then that other thought crosses my mind about retribution, or is it really fair to just shoot something because you want to see what it's all about? You know, but it's such a complex situation. These creatures are so in depth. I mean, there's so much to learn, and nobody really knows anything. We haven't scratched the surface of what's going on.
What do you think the best opportunity will be for getting some concrete information about Bigfoot?
You know, I think and I say we're like everybody who's doing the research. I think we're doing everything we possibly can. I think if we just keep on keeping on, there's that new eDNA where they can pull the DNA from the water. I think if we can collect enough DNA samples from all over the country, all over the world, and they start matching up, and then I think if the government speaks up and actually lets us know that they've known about these creatures all along, I think it'll put it to rest. But it's gonna take a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of good men and women out there that are busting their butts on this subject. And I just think it's just a matter of time.
10 years is a long time in the field doing that. I mean, what all have you discovered or seen there on that farm?
Well, I've got a theory about their travel. You notice certain times of year in certain areas where there'll be a lot of sightings, but the rest of the year there's not. And I have a theory that these creatures are smart enough to know that breeding age males migrate to other Bigfoot colonies to breed, to reduce inbreeding. And I think that's where we're seeing them, on a chance encounter. The guy driving down the highway sees a Bigfoot on the side of the road. I think that's what that's all about, is they're traveling to other colonies to breed. And I've got a pretty good um, thing going right now where I'm going to test that theory here in the wintertime, because our area, it seems like late fall, early winter, they travel across Mount Washington right outside of the city of Pittsburgh. And me and my group have decided we're going to do a few experiments there. We also have an experiment planned where we're going to equip a vehicle with IR night vision cameras and recorders, and have somebody act like they're broke down in the middle of the woods, because it seems like they're very curious in situations like that. And we're going to see if we can't catch them on film, see if maybe we could attract them.
Well, what else can you tell me?
I don't have any real big secrets that anybody else doesn't really know. The biggest thing I think I would want to tell everybody out there that's investigating is just really be cautious, man. If you feel like you're not supposed to be there, or you're in the wrong place, listen to your feelings and get out of there, because like I said, I did, and I'm paying a price right now for it. And that's, I don't know. I wish I had like this magic secret that would put all this to rest, but I'm just another investigator trying to piece it all together like everybody else.